29th Superbrawl 2! Best friends become bitter foes as Lex Luger and Sting brawl for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, and ravishing Rick Rude tangles with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat for the U.S. Heavyweight title. Superbrawl 2! Live and only on pay-per-view.
Hey, old school wrestling fans, time for your Superbrawl 2 retro review. But first of all, we get a Superbrawl 2 pre-show hosted by Jesse the Body Ventura and good old JR Jim Ross. But these guys didn't always get along.
The only guy I couldn't broadcast with was Jim Ross.
Why's that?
I don't think he liked me.
Really?
Yeah, he wouldn't put over me. He would never work with me. I think he was angry because I was probably making 4 times the money he was.
Yes, some jealousy between JR and Jesse the Body Ventura as they became a regular pay-per-view announce team for WCW during this period. Ross just couldn't get over the big star Jesse Ventura earning much more than he, although they did sort of kiss and make up of sorts years later when Ross admitted he was being unprofessional. But throughout this pre-show, as they run down the card and predict the matches, show video packages to preview the matches, it's just obvious that they're not getting along, which leads to some awkward exchanges just like this one.
Why does one wear a mask like that? He must be really ugly.
Well, I've
the truth?
I've never seen the guy.
I haven't either.
How about, well, I'm not going to talk about, never mind. It's not important, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to be knocked out of my chair prior to Super Brawl. I'm sorry.
What ain't important? What are you getting at?
I'm not getting at anything. I think we should take a look at Jushin Thunder Liger and Flying Brian.
I'm going to keep my eye on you.
Okay, quite the insight there from the Body on Liger's mystery. No, why he wears a mask and all that. Maybe he looks ugly. Who knows? But anyway, you can see some sort of real awkward moments there. But as I said, they do make for a pretty nice announce team. Now, one thing they do on this preview show, which is this bog standard type, which is quite sort of funny, is that they predict the big matches on the card. And I actually like how they flip it around at one point, like with the tag title situations. Bobby and Arn against the Steiners, the face JR actually predicts the Dangerous Alliance will win, which is different. He goes against his favourites, the Steiner brothers, and Jesse does the reverse. He actually predicts the Steiners to win. That's pretty cool. Of course, Jesse was never going to go against his man Rick Rude in the US title match. Now, time for an ad break and some classic retro 90s advert.
You're looking at the next breakthrough for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Introducing Super Scope 6. Remote-powered and laser-accurate. Precise to a single television pixel. It comes with 6 great games, and it's yours for under $60, all of which gets you into the game. Like never before. Super Scope 6, only for Super Nintendo. Now you're playing with power. Superpower.
Lizzing is a combination of laughing and whizzing.
And it's the only appropriate response to that classic nostalgia blast. Just the one match on the pre-show, which was the US Tag Title match, the New Look team of the Taylor-Made Man and Greg the Hammer Valentine against future WCW champ Ron Simmons and the future Doink the Clown Big Josh. So the big men, Hammer and Simmons, start off hip toss by Simmons. Hammer fires back, but Simmons powers out with a kick-off. But the veteran Valentine, smart enough to snap Simmons into his corner, tag to Taylor, who's backdropped by Josh. We get a nice little comic spot round the ring as he holds on to Taylor's foot before spinning him around in an atomic drops. Decent selling by Taylor. He's met with a clothesline off the ropes. Josh gets a 2 count. Simmons back into the mat. Stiff clothesline by the All-American. Taylor, acting all out of it like a chicken shit, casually makes the tag. Valentine back in with some heavy lumber. Those big knife-edge reverse chops send Simmons for a ride, but he misses and hits the ring post, but comes back with a nice belly-to-back suplex on Josh. The heels team up. Taylor going for a sunset flip, never going to get it. Josh sits down and then does his log rolling move on Taylor, who seems like the whipping boy of this match, to be fair. Once again selling that. Down to the mat, headlock takeover. Taylor reverses, almost sneaks the win with a roll of the tights. A couple of near falls there for Taylor. Simmons back into the match, power slam on Taylor, but then telegraphs a charge into the ropes. Taylor out the way. Valentine runs his back into the guardrail. Josh almost goes nuts with a stick, and then the jawbreaker by Taylor on the inside. Valentine and Simmons renew their rivalry, pounding each other into the mat. Double clothesline, they both had the same idea, but then Valentine with a headbutt into the groin area, trying to power down Simmons, but Simmons showing his strength, and then double knees into the groin area of Valentine. Taylor back in, small package by Simmons, almost sneaks the win, but Taylor back on top, backbreaker, can only get a 2 count as Simmons powers out, takes it down to the mat with a chin lock. Simmons counters with a jawbreaker, nice sound from Taylor, tag on the heel end, and the hot tag to Big Josh, who takes on both members of the challenging team, hammering away, double knocker, Simmons to Taylor's head, Josh once again stamping, this time on Valentine, goes to the top for the Northern Lights drop. And look how long this takes. The referee tied up with Simmons. He's slow getting out of there, which costs his team the five-arm rolling shot, setting up Valentine for the win. New US Tag Team Champions, Valentine's and the Taylor main man. And I tell you what, Simmons will be relieved to get the hell out of that scene. He's got bigger fish to fry later in the year. But you know what? Decent enough result there. I think Taylor and Valentine as new US champion. It's a decent spot for Taylor and a decent spot for the returning Valentine, but we'll see how their fortunes fare in the coming months. A pretty standard match, this one, but not too bad as a warm-up pre-pay-per-view match. I'll give it 2.5 stars. And now on to the main show. So to the main pay-per-view, and the show described by JR as the biggest pay-per-view in WCW history up to that point, which probably is true, so let's see if it lives up to the hype. So it took place on the 29th of February, the day 1992, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Serene, at the Miller Life Center, and it had around about 160,000 buys on pay-per-view. The attendance was about 5,000, that's a rough estimate. And the tagline, because I love doing this stuff, it's best friends, now bitter rivals, brawl for it all. And I just have to do it in the announcer's voice. You see the Body Ventura's big WCW pay-per-view debut. He got the red carpet rolled out for him in the opening minutes, him and JR calling the action from ringside. You also had Tony Schiavone and a young looking Eric Bischoff, who were co-hosts for the night. They sort of gave their own analysis. It added a bit of charm. It sort of like, it prolonged things a little bit, but it added a little bit more of an anticipation as they sort of bantered over the various matches and disagreed. And you also had Missy Hyatt in her radiant gown doing backstage interviews, and she was looking to get some of the hot scoops of the night in a way only Missy can, and obviously trying to avoid more embarrassment like what happened at Superbrawl 1 year ago with Stan Malarian Hansen and those scary boxer shorts. And we open with the light heavyweight title rematch, the perfect match to open the card, and personally one of my favourite matches of all time. The return from the dramatic match Christmas night in Atlanta, Jushin Thunder Liger, the newly crowned champion, defending against the former champion, Flying Brian Pillman. And they start with some classic old school wrestling, some technical back and forth, feeling each other out. Liger with a nice hammer lock, Pillman countering, A nice head scissors takeover, a baseball slide drop kick on the outside, nice early pop for the challenger. And I'll say this for Liger, he did play the role of the heel very nicely in this match. Not only looking very strong, but also putting Pillman over big time, and he really worked the crowd to perfection with his selling and his little subtle movements and mannerisms. The pair exchange stinging knife-edge chops, but Liger scores the first near fall of the match with a nice top rope moonsault for a 2 count. The Japanese legend also does a beautiful fake out in the corner after Pillman moves out the way. He swings himself literally around the buckles to keep himself alive in the match. And then Pillman comes back with a beautiful old school abdominal stretch scissors maneuver on the mat, but Liger counters with a nice bow and arrow type maneuver, grounding Pillman once again. He continues to work on Bryan's legs throughout the match, but Bryan comes back, is able to slip out before too much damage is done, gets a dramatic near fall from a crucifix type maneuver. With a great leverage move, Liger slides across Pillman's body, turning it into a beautiful sunset flip for a 2 count, but Bryan bounces back with a nice belly-to-belly suplex for a 2 count of his own, but then the challenger misses a running knee in the corner. Liger's experience coming to the fore, and like a shark he smells blood, zones in on the knee and locks on a figure 4 leg drop, really testing Pillman as the crowd chant USA, USA to try and encourage the younger athlete. Pillman reverses the hold finally, but Liger reverses it right back, so Liger locks on a half a Boston Crab, half crab. Pillman makes the ropes. They sort of rumble. Pillman shot outside, and Liger in another stealing high spot hits a dramatic moonsault off the top rope. It's absolutely a sick spot. They come back into the ring. They sort of rumble on the apron, and Pillman gives Liger a really sick-looking suplex onto the apron, and then in one of Pillman's highlights of the match, he gets tremendous hang time on a really dramatic crossbody off the top rope, straight onto Liger. They crash on the floor. Pillman going for broke in his bid to become new light heavyweight champion, but he's a bit overeager once again as he goes for another similar type move off the apron. Liger moves out the way. Pillman hits his front on the guardrail, and this could really open things up for Liger to take the victory. Liger smells blood, goes for the winning blow and manoeuvre off the top rope, but he is caught with a Pillman drop kick in midair. Perfect timing on this move. They then have the same idea as both men are getting fatigued at this point. A number of minutes into the match, they both go for a drop kick and they cancel out one another as we enter the latter stages of the match. Pillman goes up top, looking to take advantage, but they both drop kick each other, both with the same idea. There you see great timing on that maneuver as they both try to regroup themselves. Liger comes around first, looks to hit a move off the top rope. Again, they both have the same idea. Spin reel, martial arts kick, and the referee puts a double count on. Reverse off the ropes by Pillman, a nice power slam. Ref goes down, he gets 2.5, then Liger counters a waistlock into a beautiful German suplex and an even nearer full leg. Dramatic kick out from Pillman. Liger thought he had him. Up top once again, Liger looking for a superplex, but it's countered by Pillman. Pillman now takes a chance, nice looking crossbody from the top, but he can only get to Liger just out there as the pace quickens once again, and Liger with a diverse move, a nice looking power bomb, but just can't hold Pillman down. A second power bomb attempt is actually reversed into a cradle, but Pillman just not enough weight to get the pin. DDT on Liger then off the ropes, but Liger, too close to the ropes, reaches across to break the count. As the pace quickens again, a nice duck down, both men with the same idea, colliding in midair. Then Pillman's caught up top, straddled, as Liger looks for a superplex type maneuver, and he nails it. Nice execution. He thinks he might have the pin, he doesn't at the legs, and that's proved to be a mistake. Pillman barely out, but then Liger missing a headbutt off the top rope, and this is the key moment of the match. Pillman with a cradle, sits back on the pin, beautiful execution, and Pillman wins the light heavyweight title for the second time in a classic opener, the perfect opener to this massive pay-per-view. A classic light heavyweight match which would go down in the history of WCW. Years later, the likes of Paul Heyman would be raving about it, saying what an important match it was in the direction of light heavyweight action in the United States. How influential it was for later stuff that we saw. And boy, was he right. As I said, this is one of my favourite matches, and it's a perfect way to open a pay-per-view. They told a tremendous story. You saw some outrageous stuff, some great wrestling back and forth, and a really convincing, dramatic match to watch. And how important it is that Pillman actually won the match with mat wrestling with a manoeuvre on the ground. Unbelievable match. The full match, by the way, can be found on Brian Pillman's DVD, which the WWE released some years ago. Really worth a look, that DVD. But yeah, Superbrawl 2 couldn't have got off to a better start. I'm going to give this 5 stars out of 5. Before his match with the rookie Marcus Bagwell, the tailor-made man is interviewed by Missy Hyatt in the dressing room area, and he mocks Bagwell, saying he tried to take the rookie under his wing, tried to teach him how to be a winner, how to hang out with beautiful women like Missy Hyatt. He says, basically, I was going to teach you how to be a winner, now I'm going to teach you how to be a loser. And after such an awesome opening matchup, WCW could not have picked a worse follow-up match. This match was real, it was really flat, very awkward, sloppy exchanges. First half of the match sort of played out really like a boxing match, but the story of the match was Taylor underestimating the rookie with some cocky covers. Sometimes he would pull him up on a move after he'd hit his sit-out powerbomb. And the finish itself was lame. After Bagwell kicks out of a top rope crossbody, Taylor argues with the referee. Bagwell rolls him up for a weak pin. Taylor got some heat back at the end of the match with his firearm maneuver, which suggests they're going to keep this feud going, which isn't good news. And this was really a dead match. I don't think the crowd cares. It's just as well Taylor's the US tag title being saddled with this sort of lame fella. I'll give it 1.5 stars. For her latest interview, Missy goes looking for World Heavyweight Champion Lex Luger. Instead, she gets Harley Race, so it's a bit of a letdown. Race says Luger's in intense training for the pay-per-view main event coming up later on. Knowing Lex around this time and the fact that he's coasting in WCW exit to the WWF, no doubt he's sitting on his ass. Next up, it's Ron Simmons against Cactus Jack in one of the better matches of the night, which isn't one of the main matches. These two are cooking up quite the feud, and they click really nicely in the ring. Jack starts off early, catching the All-American off guard before the bell, but soon hangs himself up in the ring ropes. Looking spot. Simmons presses ahead with a face plant, followed by a body slam and a leg drop for a 2 count. And as Jack bounces back, we get a shot of Junkyard Dog, who's a guest at Superbrawl, so JR says in the crowd, and Jesse comments how he looks like a waiter. Jack hits a good-looking double arm DDT and running elbow drop for a 2 count. The match goes outside, very much the madman's playground, and he nails Simmons in the chest with his elbow off the second rope and gives a bang bang. I love it. The story of the match at this point is Simmons trying to keep it to wrestling, Jack trying to turn it into a brawling type match. Simmons only gets a 2 count from a drop kick when they're back inside. The former Doom member digs into his football background, but he misses with the 3-point stance shoulder tackle, as then the action goes on to the ramp. And Simmons hits a badass looking spine buster, which looks so painful. Jack is bumping like a boss. As always, you can see why this guy became such a big star in the future in the WWF. Thumb to the eye by Jack, he hits a running bulldog on the rampway, but back inside, Simmons gets the win as Jack dives off the top rope. He's caught in midair. Simmons' power game coming into play as he hits him with a spinebuster, driving the air out of him, getting the 1-2-3, a hard-fought win for Simmons, and a match which was much better than expected. I'm going to give it 3 stars. Buddy Abdullah the Butcher comes out, nails Simmons with a Kendall stick, but then you guessed it, JYD himself made the save. He comes in the ring, clears the ring, and this sets up a tag team match between the 4 men at the next pay-per-view, Wrestle War, in May. Now, this is interesting because Junkyard Dog hasn't been seen in WCW for about a year, when he last had a shortly lived 6-man tag team reign. And to be fair, JYD, a big star in his day, is long past his best. So this doesn't seem like the best move on WCW's part. Simmons would say in later years that he really was nervous and had no interest in working some of the crazy gimmick matches which Jack was coming up with at the time, which is interesting because later in the year Jack would have a major gimmick match with Sting at a pay-per-view. Also, Arn Anderson and other wrestlers have commented on just how crazy Jack was, just how insane some of his bumps were and ahead of its time, and how often he would do crazy shit that would leave an average wrestler literally dead. But Jack would do it for real, like in this match, he does a crazy bump onto the concrete and somehow he survives. Awesome stuff looking back, considering this was 30 years ago. Next up, 92's answer to a piss break match as the random pairing of Richard Morton and Vinny Vegas take on the Z-Man and Heavy Metal Van Hammer. The 2 big men start the match and boy does it suck the life out of the building. There's a little bit of a spark when Tom Zink and Morton are in, but sadly they're not in together for enough time. The booking is really backwards too, because Hammer is in and takes most of the beating, leading to the hot tag to the Z-Man. Now, given Hammer's limited ring skills, you would have thought it would have been reversed. Z-Man is much more better to do the selling as the smaller man, really giving that underdog sort of feel until he gets the hot tag to Hammer. But they did it in reverse and it really dragged the match down as a result. In the end, Z-Man gets the win with the sunset flip on Morton, so WCW continued to protect Vinny Vegas and Van Hammer. Sadly, I'll give the match 1.5 stars, a real dud. Next up, a full-on grudge match and the first appearance of the Dangerous Alliance for the evening as TV champs Stunning Steve Austin and Larry the Cruncher Zbyszko along with Medusa take on the Natural Dustin Rhodes and Big Barry Windham, and this is full-on from the start. They pair off Rhodes and Austin, Zbyszko and Windham as Rhodes scores a 2 count from a backslide on Austin. He also gets a near fall from a nice looking lariat off the top rope. Windham comes in and a nice drop kick onto the TV champion with nice leg extension. They're going for a TV title feud right now, but Wyndham wants Zbyszko, the man who put him on the shelf in October. Larry gets a small respite with a karate kick. Pile driver is countered into a backdrop as he takes a sick looking bump onto the ramp, and back inside, Wyndham continues the punishment. He hits a nice looking flying lariat, but instead of going for the pin, he wants to punish Zbyszko more with hard, stiff blows to the head. The duo of Rhodes and Wyndham really get into their groove after Barry drills the Cruncher with a spiked DDT. The duo hit a nice double drop kick, good timing on that one. However, a pile driver attempt by Wyndham is saved by Austin with a hard lariat, turning Wyndham inside out, and the heels take over from there. Wyndham viciously has his head run into the guardrail, even more painful. Ouch, he's straddled groin first onto the rail and back inside. A stiff Austin clothesline is followed by a smooth back suplex inside the ring for a near fall. The heels cut off the ring at this point, and the crowd are solidly behind Wyndham. A Zbyszko sleeper is countered with a jawbreaker, and the hot tag to Dustin Rhodes, who unloads on the heel with a barrage of moves including a drop kick and an elbow drop, and a big elbow for nice measure. But Rhodes is then spun around by Austin and takes a hard lariat which turns him inside out, just like what happened to Wyndham before. A Medusa slap draws Rhodes outside, maybe showing his inexperience. Larry sucks chance at this point, a crisscross back in the ring and a nice looking crossbody block from Rhodes gets a near fall, but his comeback is short lived as he takes another stiff lariat maneuver from Austin. Rhodes also scores a near fall from a small package. The heels keep the freshman in the match, with Austin grounding Rhodes with a chin lock and a good old-fashioned foot on the rope for extra leverage. Dustin gets a break by using Austin's own stun gun move on him. He makes the hot tag to his more experienced partner Wyndham, who comes in taking on both heels with a barrage of moves. A nice drop kick, lariat type move, and a suplex also. Larry is caught on the top rope as Rhodes shoots him off, and this sets him up perfectly for Wyndham with a top rope lariat, almost takes him out of his boots, and the 1-2-3 fitting that he pins Zbyszko for the win, and the faces get a huge well-deserved pop as they defeat the Dangerous Alliance in the first match of the night to involve the faces against Paulie's Dangerous Alliance. A very good match, very gripping to watch. I'm going to give it 4 stars. All 4 of these guys were on top form in this one. Missy goes looking for Ricky Steamboat, meditating of all things. I just love this shit. Smoke goes flying everywhere. Missy's thrown out by the ninja, but then Medusa comes along looking to influence the dragon himself. She tries to flirt with the ninja. She offers him sushi, and much to Missy's amusement, but the segment ends in predictable fashion with the ninja chasing Medusa away, but Missy, of course, is staying on the spot. Next up, it's the WCW World Tag Team Championships as the Dangerous Alliance team of Beautiful Bobby Eaton and Arn Anderson take on the Steiner Brothers. The Steiner Brothers looking for their first World Tag Team Championship in almost 2 years since they lost the belts to Doom in May 1990. Fun fact, at the debut Superbrawl in May 91, Arn and Bobby competed with each other one-on-one as Bobby became the WCW television champion in what was seen as an upset victory over his future tag partner with the swinging neckbreaker, followed by the Alabama Jammers. WCW were trying to push Bobby Eaton as a singles wrestler. He even challenged Ric Flair for the NWA Championship, but this was his big first singles title just 1 year ago. Just when it looked like Paulie Dangerously would have his one managing gig of the night, wink wink, WCW and new boss K.L. Fry had other plans as he barred the manager from ringside. Of course, the fans and the Steiner brothers popped. Of course, Dangerously sold it like a pro. And of course, Jesse the Body Ventura shouted conspiracy. I also enjoyed the touch of, in this match, Ross having a go at a dig at Ventura's real life political aspirations. That was glorious. But yeah, Dangerously barred from ringside, which obviously ups the stakes going into this big matchup. Part of building the Steiners up as favourites, the announcers claim that the Steiners have never been beaten by pinfall. This is, of course, false. Medusa replaces Dangerously at ringside. Scott opens up with Eaton. Bobby gets a nice swinging neckbreaker but is caught coming off the ropes with a nice belly-to-belly suplex by the younger Steiner brothers. Arn and Rick tag in and we get a power v power matchup. The dog-faced gremlin taunts Arn on all fours, classic style. Anderson's leapfrog is turned into an awesome mid-air counter into a power slam. The fans pop big time. Scott wins the test of strength after bridging up against Arn. In an awesome spot, the younger Steiner flips both Arn and Bobby over at the same time. This is just awesome, and this is one of the reasons why the Steiner brothers were one of the hottest tag teams in the world at this time, and one of the hottest tag teams ever because of inventive, great looking spots like this. Rick hits 2 Steiner lines to clear the ring. Bobby takes another big bump from a Scott tilt-a-whirl slam on the ramp. Ouch. Back inside we get some wrestling with a camel clutch, a move you don't see enough. The crowd shout, "We want blood, we want blood." Eaton is caught up on the top rope on Rick's shoulders and is set up for a Scott top rope clothesline. Very nice looking spot. Again, the heels really doing some great selling and bumping for the Steiners. Arn comes in to make the save on the cover though. The heels double team Rick. Scott evens up the odds and the Steiners hit a stereo suplex on the champs. Scott's vertical suplex gets 2 on Anderson. In a good old-fashioned Anderson family tactic, Arn runs Scott's head into his own partners. That whole thing of a partner willing to sacrifice himself for his own team to get the advantage, because that is the turning point. Eaton gets 2 with a knee drop off the top. Arn's classic double DDT looks great. Double A then tries for a pin on Steiner, down to like a Matt Roman style maneuver. The Dangerous Alliance are finding their groove. Arn hooks on a Boston Crab, placing Scott perfectly for a Bobby top rope elbow. Bobby applies a camel clutch as Rick is desperate to get in the ring but is given a cheap shot by the heels. Bobby's rocket launcher onto Scott on the ramp looks great. Rick finally gets in maybe the highlight of the match. Steiner is placed on Arn's shoulders. Bobby flies off the top with a crossbody but is caught in midair and turned into a power slam for a red hot 2 count. You really don't get any closer than this without winning the titles. Rick hits a top rope bulldog, which again looks very good. Bobby makes the save with the ref's back turned. he tosses powder into Rick's eyes. Blinded, Rick mistakes the ref for a wrestler and suplexes him instead. Oh boy. The match goes on and the replacement ref counts 1, 2, 3 after a Frankensteiner. New champs, right? New champs? New champs? Hold up. No, let's bring this thing back. Amongst the confusion in the arena, Jesse's hot. The original ref recovers and he overturns the decision. The Dangerous Alliance retain the straps, winning by DQ. And what a bullshit finish. That really was a dusty finish, folks. This would become a theme in the next 2 matches. Both excellent matches, let down by lame finishes. Clearly WCW wanted to protect the Steiners, but kept the belts on Arn and Bobby, retaining their heat. But this was the wrong way to go about it. If they were going for a DQ finish, it would have made more sense to have had their heels get the DQ. This feud will go on. I'm going to give it 4 stars. It was a very good match, which pretty much lived up to the hype. 2 great teams, some great wrestling, some great high spots, some great tension and drama. But yeah, it was sadly let down a bit by the finish. That's my only complaint of this match. It was such a bullshit finish. I'll still give it the 4 stars despite the finish. Coming up next in the semi-final spot, a match which by the end of the night some fans might have wished was the main event. It's the grudge match for the US heavyweight title as Ravishing Rick Rude defends against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and the Ninja. If you want to see how over Rude was as a heel in his prime, just check out the crowd reaction as he attempts to get his normal pre-match promo at the expense of the crowd. Loud boos keep cutting the champion off as the US champ gets legitimately pissed. Damn. The match starts with a feeling out process. The Dragon smartly focuses on Rude's arm with an armbar, hoisting him up and dropping him down. The classic Steamboat armbar is on point. The challenger shows a more aggressive side than normal, showing how personal this match is and also the importance of the US title. Steamboat wraps the champion's arm around the ring post. Rude's selling here is top notch. Both guys are at the top of their games here. This was a mid-card feud in the WWF, it should be pointed out. The challenger keeps on top with a karate kick to the arm and a hammerlock slam. Nice sound basic wrestling. The former NWA champion picks up the pace with a crossbody off the top rope for a 2 count before returning to the arm again. Great sound strategy, logical storytelling, which so often is lacking from today's wrestling. Rude himself flies with a crossbody, momentum taking both men outside. This looked good. The Ravishing One runs Steamboat into the guardrail and suplexes Ricky back inside. The champ fights on with one arm and even finds time to pose. Jesse's delight. He loves it. Turning up the heat, Rude drops the Dragon on the top cable. A sweep-looking swinging neckbreaker and a pile driver gets the champs a near fall. Another 2 count follows from a belly-to-back suplex. Returning to Rude's leg, Steamboat locks on a figure 4 leg lock. Rude is able to stretch to the ropes, however. Rude is then on target with a snake eyes and a top rope double axe handle. Nice sound from Steamboat. Because of his injured arm, Rude struggles to get a proper pin on Steamboat, getting just 2. The champ then goes to the ground with a chin lock and a camel clutch. Some classic wrestling holds again on this show. We get a classic slow comeback by Steamboat, which he is so noted for over the years. He powers Rude up onto his shoulders with an electric chair, which looks very good. The pace picks up again as they butt heads in the middle of the ring after both going for a leapfrog. This was a nice looking spot too. Rude hooks on a sleeper, which the Dragon quickly breaks out of before applying one of his own. Rude breaks this with a jawbreaker, but then is straddled on the top rope as Steamboat hits a beautiful suplex for a dramatic 2.5 count, the nearest fall of the match so far. Dragon keeps rolling with a backdrop, a low bridge, and clothesline, which gets a 2, followed by a flapjack. Steamboat then goes back to the top rope and hits a well-timed forearm off the top, but instead of going for the pin, Steamboat goes back up top for a second time, and out of nowhere the Ninja pops up with a telephone and he whacks Steamboat. What the fuck is going on? A stunned ref, nice touch there, slowly counts the 3, and Rude retains the US Heavyweight Champion. Jesse has fun pretending that the Ninja isn't one Paulie Dangerously. This is confirmed moments later when Missy catches Dangerously in a ninja outfit get up in the locker room. The finish isn't as silly as the tag title one, but it's still a bit of a flat finish to an otherwise top-notch match for great drama and heat. The whole thing with the Ninja was always a bit goofy, but it was fun in a batshit insane kind of way. The twist at least is a nice payoff to Dangerously's confidence that Rude would still pull through by sticking to the plan. Wink wink. If you look at it too hard, it really doesn't make a lot of sense, because Ricky Steamboat supposedly went out and got this ninja for hire. I suppose he went to the Yellow Pages. Maybe you could argue the Dangerous Alliance set that whole thing up, knowing that he might be looking for protection, but it's still very far-fetched when you consider it. Nonetheless, a decent twist. It keeps the heat on Rude and sets up a rematch between the pair further down the line. Their feud would still go on for months on end. With this ropey finish, it does set up future matches, including their next big match, which is at Beach Blast in June, which may be even better than this one, but that's another review for another time. But I really like this match, bar maybe the finish, but even that served its purpose. So really strong stuff between these two guys in the prime of their careers, and I'm gonna give it 4.5 stars. Really great stuff, and my second favourite match of the night up to this point, and in its own way just as good as the Liger-Pillman match early. Almost time for the main event, but before we get there, a bit of a history lesson leading up to the WCW title main event. In the summer of '91, when Ric Flair finally decided he'd had enough of the politics of WCW, he shocked the wrestling world by leaving for the WWF, taking the NWA title belt with him onto WWF television. That forced WCW into splitting ties with the NWA, creating their own title, the WCW title, and putting it on the Total Package Lex Luger, who won it in the main event of the '91 Great American Bash, pinning the other number one contender Barry Windham with a pile drive after a little help from his new manager Hanson Harley Race, who came to ringside during the match and surprisingly helped out Lex. So the match itself was only solid, but In a decent bit of booking which made a lot of sense, WCW turned Luger from face to heel in one swift move with races action. Nice example of old school booking, and it made much more sense as Lex was always a more natural heel than babyface. There you have it, the first ever official WCW champion, the total package Lex Luger. Luger narrowly came through his first major title defense against Ron Simmons at Halloween Havoc in October 1991, barely winning a 2 out of 3 falls matchup. With a dodgy DQ decision on Luger's first fall, in the end he came back to win 2-1 from a fall down. Towards the end of the year, Lex Luger targeted his former best friend Sting by hiring Abdullah the Butcher and Cactus Jack as hired assassins to attack Sting and put him on the shelf. In one memorable segment during his return to WCW, Abdullah the Butcher came out of a gift wrap box of all things and hammered away on Sting, going after the knee, putting him, as I said, on the shelf really. These attacks from him and Cactus Jack led to Sting losing the US title to Ravishing Rick Rude, and also made him vulnerable for any future matches. Put him on the shelf for a while, and this is what really set things in motion for the Sting against Lex Luger feud, which built over many months, leading into Superbrawl. Sting returned from injury to upset the odds and win the confusing but entertaining 20-man 2-ring battle royal at Battle Bowl at the Great American Bash in December 91. In the closing moments of the match, an already eliminated Rick Rude decided to get his final shot in on Sting, delivering the Rude Awakening, which set up Sting against Lex Luger in the closing moments.
They're both in magnificent condition. Sting already held on. Luger thinks he hasn't won, but Sting held on. Can he reach down? Sting with the right hands. Upstairs, a kick to the gut. Another right hand. The Stinger is on fire here. Big right hand, and the world's champion is reeling. The Stinger becoming offensively dominant. This crowd is going crazy. The moment is now. He's got to do it right now. Sting with a clothesline. Luger, oh, great balance. He held on. Sting, he got him over, and Sting won it. Sting defeats Luger to win Battle Bowl.
By eliminating Luger to win the first Battle Bowl, Sting effectively became the #1 contender for the WCW title, which set up the big main event and blow-off match against the ex-best friends at Superbrawl 2, Sting versus Luger for the WCW title. In the weeks leading up to the big main event, WCW presented this story on TV of Lex going into hiding to put in extra training for his big title defense, whereas on the other hand, Sting was everywhere on TV, wrestling frequently, making public appearances and getting himself ready for the match in that sense, although to be fair, he was mostly only beating job guys. So it was an end of an era for Lex Luger in WCW as he was making his final appearance in the promotion for a few years at least before moving on to other pastures. So for a long time he had been competing near the top of the card or at the top sometime. He had some great matches with Ric Flair in the late 80s, early 90s, where he was in prime position to win the title, but never quite became World Heavyweight Champion. He was multiple-time US champion, but finally, when he got his opportunity and became the first ever official WCW champion, it was a very underwhelming run on top. It never quite took off the way the company and Luger was hoping. In the meantime, with the arrival of Red Hot Heel Faction, the Dangerous Alliance and other big stars starting to be pushed to the forefront, such as Cactus Jack, Big Van Vader and others, plus the light heavyweight division taking off, really it was time for a change for Luger. He was being sort of outshined by younger, fresher talent, so he was off after this matchup, and it was time to take a bow in WCW, at least for the time being, setting up the match against Sting, who was attempting to win his second ever WCW title, well, his first WCW title, his second world title in total in the company, after beating Flair for the NWA title at the 1990 Great American Bash. Still best friends behind the scenes, the Stinger and Luger close a very good show and their slow burning feud with a whimper. Luger was often known for phoning his performance in, but he takes it to whole new levels here. In reality, Lex has signed for Vince McMahon's WBF and is leaving WCW. Within a year, he would have signed a contract to wrestle for the WWF. The departing champ can barely muster a strut to the ring, while Sting draws a strong response from the crowd. This is Sting's big night, and his best friend can't even be bothered giving him a rub on the way out the door. With friends like these, huh? We start off with a classic face-to-face, another thing I miss from modern wrestling. The match soon peters out into a mediocre 12-minute power match with some lackluster moves. More importantly, it lacks any real spark or heat. This didn't feel like a heated feud-ending match for the most important title in the company. It pales in comparison with the light heavyweight title, the tag title and US title matches, which came earlier in the night. The finish comes out of the blue too. Luger backdrops Sting outside. As the champion poses, Sting jumps back up on the apron and hits a top rope crossbody for the 3 count and his second world title win, and that's it. What the fuck? Luger's WCW title run, which hardly set the world on fire, comes to a limp end. It's possible Lex was made to look like a bit of a jobber by management, knowing he was leaving. The finish comes off as a bit of a fluke for Sting, not the way to kick off his reign. The announcers couldn't help but take shots at Lex. Jesse slammed his half-hearted piledriver, Ross later adding, after the first few minutes, the result was never really in doubt, in my opinion. Bit of a lame main event. I'm going to give it 2 stars. So it's a new chapter for Sting with his second world title reign, a new chapter for WCW, and overall a very successful pay-per-view with some highs and lows, but most of the top matches delivered at least. I'm going to be positive and give the show 8.5 out of 10. It was a very good show. It didn't quite live up to the hype, but overall, really enjoyable stuff. My match of the night is Liger versus Pillman. The US title match would be a close second. And if you want to see how Lex Luger did in the WWF, then stay tuned to my channel in the coming months for more on Lex's Stamford, Connecticut run. At the post-Superbrawl 2 press conference, Sting is approached by Rick Rude, who makes his WCW World Championship ambitions known. Rude rightly points out that as the US champion and the guy who defeated Sting for that title, he is rightly the #1 contender. after Rude plays the whole card of wanting to toast with Sting to celebrate their respective victory, Sting, not trusting him, sort of puts it back in his face, leading to Rude chucking the juice or whatever it was, the champagne, in his face. This leads to a decent brawl between the two, as Nikita Koloff, recently returned to the company, helps its former foe Sting out. What's weird is, in typical WCW fashion, they don't pull the trigger on a proper Sting-Rude headline feud, which would have made sense given their history. But in the weeks to come, Koloff becomes a man of mystery, as last time out during the summer of '91 he was feuding with Sting, so this was quite the surprising return at the Superbrawl press conference. On to my updated top 10 rankings. At number 1 is Beautiful Bobby Eaton. Number 2, his Dangerous Alliance Tag Team Championship partner, the Enforcer, Arn Anderson, as they held on to the World Tag Titles on the main pay-per-view. Rick Rude, the US Champion, still the champ, in at number 3. His challenger, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, is number 4. Completing the top 5, Flying Brian Pillman, the new light heavyweight champion. 6 is Cactus Jack, the Wild Man. 7, the Natural Dustin Rhodes. 8, Ron Simmons. At number 9, you've got the former light heavyweight champion, Jushin Thunder Liger. And just cracking into the top 10 is the new world heavyweight champion. That is Sting, the tailor-made man, just outside the Coming up next time on WCW on pay-per-view, it will be Wrestle War 1992 in May, and it's the return of the match beyond itself, the War Games, as Sting's squadron takes on the Dangerous Alliance. And there will be many other treats on that show. The US Tag Team Championship match, light heavyweight action. You've also got the likes of Ron Simmons, Cactus Jack, the Z-Man, and many, many more. That's coming up next time on pay-per-view at Superbrawl. But like and subscribe this video, or subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you thought of this review. Let me know what you thought of Superbrawl 2. And I'll see you for some more retro, old school wrestling reviews again soon. Thanks for listening.